Hello, Washington, D.C. Good evening. This is the final night of Black Her Story Month, Black History Month, Black Our Story Month. And you know, I wanted to come to the capital, D.C., to address the nation. We're at a vital moment in this country. There's a lot of issues that need to be solved. And all of them are important. Don't get me wrong. But repairing the nation, that's vital. Now, I want to say this. There is an urgency. This has to get done soon. I know that it's a heavy lift. And part of this is organizing. A big chunk of this is organizing. That's why I started this way in major cities, addressing people. Because you want to lay the groundwork for it. You can't just go all out on a campaign for something like this. But it's vital that it gets done. And it gets done soon. We're talking about repairing the nation. Repairing it from what though? From a dark chapter that never really got resolved. On January 6th, 2021, you saw individuals in 1,000 storm the nation's Capitol building. They were carrying "Don't Tread on Me" flags, Trump 2020 flags, American flags. But there was an image that I don't think anyone will ever forget of an individual inside the nation's Capitol rotunda with a Confederate flag standing by a portrait of Senator John C. Calhoun from South Carolina. The primary intellectual architect of slavery in America. You knew right then and there what this was really about. That just happened. You can't say it was 1865 when I saw it in 2021. I know the conservative Republican Party is working at lightning speed to whitewash January 6th. Everything from Senator Ron Johnson saying it was a picnic to the Republican National Committee, their party, saying that it's persecution of ordinary citizens. We know that they're trying to minimize it. But the reason they're trying to minimize it is so you don't figure out what it was really for, what it was conceptualized and created for. You know, they say they're not racist. Yet, Stuart Rose, the founder of the Oath Keepers, right after Barack Obama was elected President of the United States, said it was time for a civil war. And as our new president and vice president, Kamala Harris, before the certification, you had thousands of individuals storm the nation's capital, trying to hold, in their words, hold and thwart the certification of the first African American vice president in this nation's history. Well, Washington, D.C., they're telling us it has nothing to do with race. It seems like on both occasions, when the two individuals in question were African American, there was a hatred and a violent response. You say, well, wait a minute. When Barack Obama was president, there wasn't a violent response. Yes, there was. Everything from challenging his birth and being an American citizen to Dylan Roof going in a historically black church, murdering 9 parishioners. All of that operated on a spectrum of white supremacy, white nationalism, white terror. That's been the ebb and flow of this nation since the very beginning. I don't know how old, I don't remember, when I learned that the nation's capital was built by enslaved individuals. I don't think they can say that now in the schools because that's critical race theory. Because anything that talks about, well, anything that happened in Republican world, it's critical race theory. And they're doing that for a reason too. If they can get you to not know it, then they can try to repeat it. I mean, they're trying to desensitize and whitewash the Confederate flag, for goodness sake. It's just heritage. Can you tell me how many Confederates were in Canada? So why during the trucker convoy, freedom convoy bullshit, why were people flying the Confederate flag in Canada? Last I looked, Canada was a long way from Tennessee. People know what that's a symbol of. Don't get it twisted. They're trying to whitewash it so they can go back to it, Washington, D.C. And that's where you come in. You gotta organize. Now, people say, well, we already organized. We stay organized in D.C. We're ready. January 6th. I know it was the capital and it wasn't the neighborhoods. But there was no opposition on January 6th to that insurrection from the residents of D.C. And there's a reason why. D.C. has been getting shit on forever. It's taxation, literally, with no representation. It's not because the representatives don't want to represent D.C. There are plenty of people that do. It's because legally, the United States disallows them to have representation. So you could have all kinds of people run up into your city from all over the country. And because you're not a state, because your governor has no power, your mayor has no power to do anything, you have to wait till your neighboring state of Maryland can send in the National Guard. No clear evidence exists of why D.C. needed to be a state than January 6th. Now there's a reason D.C. doesn't have statehood. And I dare say it has to do with racism. Many people have been wanting D.C. to become a state for a long period of time. But because conservatives know that 2 African Americans would most likely become senators in the state, they don't want it to happen. So you already don't have very much diversity in the United States Senate as it stands. I don't think there's a single black woman currently serving as senator. Kamala Harris was the last one, and she's vice president now. I ask you, does that look like the United States? The Senate? So they strictly don't want any diversity. And that's the reason why it's not a state. Purely political. Because I guarantee you, if D.C. was going to vote the way that Arkansas votes, D.C. would have been a state a long time ago. If it were like Arkansas. It's purely about race. But yet they say it's not. When we know for a fact that it is. But DC gotta repair the nation. And you gotta organize. You know, people say we organize. Leaflets, all the brochures. You gotta make a 30-second elevator pitch. I'm voting for this candidate. Here's why you should support this person. I know it's boring and mundane, but that moves the needle just a little bit. Registering people. Checking to see if they changed their address and re-registering it. Signing petitions. I know that's boring. It's mundane, but it's organizing. Once you've done all of that, that's the boring shit. Then the fun part of organizing begins. Getting out the vote. And that can look a million different ways. I love it when you get on a bus. And you got all the campaign brochure and materials. And you're going from high school to high school. And you got the marching bands out. You're going from college to college. And you got the marching bands out. And you got the voter registration. And you're marching all to the polls. That's the fun part of it. (2022). This is a midterm election year. You can't let it be like 1994 or 2010. You know, they say Barack Obama. I hear this all the time. President Obama. He didn't do anything. He didn't get the job done. And I'm like, wait a minute. First off, that's wildly inaccurate. It's complete bullshit. But secondly, you can't expect somebody to get a job done if you don't send them the resources to get the job done. The midterms in 2010, folks stayed home. They didn't vote. And the Tea Party clowns got back in there. And they obstructed. So even if you wanted to repair the nation, even if reparations was a thing, can you do it with Republicans? No. You gotta think logically about these things. Everybody wants to blame somebody. But folks gotta take accountability when it comes to organizing, especially. It's boring and nobody wants to do it. But it's necessary to win. You can't get anything done if you don't organize. Absolutely nothing. You can have a politician that wants to do everything. But if you don't have any groundswell, grassroots support, they can't do shit. You gotta think about it like this. You gotta make it easy for people. If people are knocking on doors, jamming phone lines, picketing, protesting, marching, writing op-eds, holding concerts, if they're doing all that shit for a singular issue, then the politicians are going to take note. They're going to say, wait a minute. There's a fever pitch out here. Folks want this to get done. So now we can campaign on it. Now we can start moving forward on it. That's what organizing is all about. Putting pressure on the politicians to get it done. Folks seem to think that politicians just go in there and get things done. No, they're lobbied. And lobby comes from organizing. One form of lobbying is money. But if you don't have a lot of money, but you do have a lot of voice and spirit, that counts too. A note on discouragement and apathy. Power concedes nothing without a demand. Everybody's saying, you know, they won't repair the nation. They've never done it. There's no support. That's generally the case on everything, if it hasn't been done. So you can't say that this is any different. And there is quite a bit of support. You look at H.R. 40 in the House of Representatives. There's quite a bit of support for H.R. 40. There's very little organizing in support of H.R. 40 on the ground. And that's the fault of the individuals who are in organizing, in my estimation. You can't say you want something and you haven't organized to get it. It just doesn't work that way. And then people will say, well, look at what happened to same-sex marriage. Look at what happened to same-sex marriage. There was organizing around the issue. At the local level, at the state level. I'm not saying that there isn't any organizing around H.R. 40. There's a tiny bit. But there's more infighting. More names. You know, nobody's gonna say, I think that we should pay this group, or that group, or this group, or that group. Nobody's gonna do all of that shit. So you gotta settle on one thing. A lot of this has to do with infighting. We have a lot of people out there, and they share different things with us. And I think it's really stupid when you have a lot of infighting over trivial things. When you all collectively agree on the big thing. The thing that we know we have to get done. You know, you have some people saying they're ADOS, they're FBA, they're NOI, they're Black Hebrew Israelites. There's just a lot of noise and infighting. And when you can do all of that, but the central issue is getting overlooked, nobody's going to say, well, you know, the central issue is this, and ignore the infighting. No. People are going to pay attention to the infighting and ignore the central issue. At the end of the day, this is an investment for the country. We know this. It's an investment. And now, finally, during COVID, because everybody wants to try to act like prior to COVID, there was investment. No, now due to COVID, there's an investment in historically Black colleges and universities. Howard University. The students were protesting this year the Blackburn takeover of the conditions, the living conditions, mold, rats, water leakage. It's been like that for decades because there was no investment. It's only recent. So when people hear all of these numbers, just know that that's recent. And that was due to organizing. And those colleges and universities saying, we've been suffering forever. But now with COVID, we're not going to suffer like this. We demand this money. So there's resources. Now. But that wasn't always the case. And I'm saying that more to conservatives than anyone else. Because they'll try to pretend and look at the numbers and say, oh, well, Howard University got this much money and they have this much. Now, very recently, 2020, 2021, 2022, you go and you look at the numbers prior to that. See what those numbers were. It's about building too. And innovation. You know, anybody that wants to build and innovate, Howard University should be the place to go. place to build and innovate? How would you be the place to go? You have the Vice President of the United States currently, who's an alumni of Howard. I listened to some of those organizers, participants of the Blackburn takeover. They're builders and thinkers and innovators. Howard University should be the place to build and innovate. And now that you have the resources, there's no more excuses. But Howard is a small subset of America. They've gained the resources. But Washington, D.C., and America at large, the African American community has not gained the resources. We need to repair the nation. You know, you gotta look at this as an investment. The return on investment is ginormous. You can't even calculate it. So it's a win-win for everybody. There's no loss. There's no shame in blaming when things get done. We know the opposition is going to be fierce. You know who the opposition is. You just got finished seeing them for 4 straight days at CPAC. Now the Sour Queen Brigade, let's be clear, they've been against any progress of the African American community in this country from the onset. When African Americans were flourishing in Tulsa, in Oklahoma, like Wall Street, what occurred? White terrorism, white supremacy. And that was in 1921, a century ago. Long after the Civil War. And you saw them storm the Capitol on January 6, 2021. Walking the rotunda with a Confederate flag. Long after the Civil War. So you know something's there. Something still needs to be repaired. This is non-debatable. I don't know. Conservatives. This is non-debatable. You can't debate this. You know you owe it. So at this point, it's cut the check. Everyone in America stands to benefit from this. So for the conservatives, they think that this thing is bad for them. But it's actually going to be good for everybody, them included. We've just got to go around it. Because at this point, They don't care about what's good for the country. They only care about what's good for them. And that's power. DC, we have to get this done. And I think you'll do it. The alternative is not good. I think people think that if you don't invest, if you let the situation stay the same, that everybody will continue operating the same. You know, I can't understand at all how after what was done to black women in this country, people talk about angry black women, angry black women. When you've been sodomized for centuries and bred to be sodomized, I think you'd be angry too. You gotta think about it like this. If you woke up tomorrow or the day after, and every black American woman was gone from the country, chose to go and live in one country other than America, you know overnight that country would be the richest nation in the history of the planet. So you fuckers not investing in black women, but making money off of black women. You might not be able to do that very much longer. The way things are going. The way technology is moving. The way information is moving. The way people work freely. You gotta get this done. We all know we can get it done. There's going to be plenty of obstruction. And that's where organizing comes in. You gotta organize. And you gotta vote. You can't say, oh, well, I want this to happen, but I'm going to sit it out. I'm upset that it hasn't happened. I'm going to sit it out. Even after 2020, they're coming back with a vengeance in 2022. White supremacy doesn't sit out elections. White supremacists don't say, oh, we lost. They don't even acknowledge that they lose. When they actually lose, they say the election was rigged and stolen. They don't sit elections out. They always participate. You can't sit an election out. You can't not organize. This is going to require a big push. An all hands on deck approach. You know, they're sending bomb threats to black colleges and universities all across America. I would counter. I would send buses and set up voter registration booths and highlight black historically colleges and universities. I get everybody on those campuses registered to vote. Make sure their voter registration is updated. I have spectacular concerts on those campuses to get out the vote. I do marches to the polls. Dances to the polls. I be contacting everybody on TikTok. Tell them to cut the check. You gotta organize. You know what the opposition is gonna say. It's radical. It's socialism. It's communism. Because they don't want to do anything. They want to starve you out. You gotta organize. And you gotta fight back. DC, you're gonna get this job done. I guarantee you. We went to Detroit. We went to Chicago. We went to Baltimore. We went to Philadelphia. We went to Charlottesville. We went to New York City. We went to Cleveland. Now you get up and you go. Go to the local Starbucks. Tell them get ready to vote. Go to the local barbecue joint. Tell them get ready to vote. Go to the local bookstore. Tell them to get ready to vote. Go to the local Whole Foods. Tell them to get ready to vote. Get registered. Then march, parade, and vote. And keep voting. And vote and vote and vote. And don't stop voting. And make sure if you're voting, the candidate you're voting for supports H.R. 40. Make sure you tell them you're ready. Like J.J. Wentworth. It's my money and I need it now. You tell them it's your money and you need it now. You tell them you're ready. You know, once we have it, once we finally invest it, this president talks about a soul of the nation. Once we've actually repaired the nation, we've done reparations, we'll finally have a soul in this nation, collectively, as a people. And once you have a soul, then you'll have to defend it. You'll be ready to defend the soul of the nation. DC, are you ready? You're like, ready for what? Ready to go. You're like, yeah, you know, we're always ready. DC, are you ready? Get ready, DC. Get ready to vote. And keep voting. And make sure that they're with you when you vote for them.